I'm your host, Effie Pilarinu, and today I'm taking you, I think, to the Metaverse, to its gaming family home, so to speak. I have the pleasure to have with us Arun Krishnamumar. Welcome, Arun.
Thanks, Effie. Thanks for having me. And that's what the metaverse looks like.
Yeah, it does it. Is that how it looks like above London? Because I think here in Switzerland it has a slightly different look.
Yeah. I mean, we all are getting into this virtual world. I'm sure that we'll all have that opportunity, infrastructure willing at some point. And yeah, it's a cool future we are all working towards. And I'm glad that I'm actually almost watching the transition. It's fascinating.
Talking about transition for our audience, with Arun, our roads crossed. What was it, 6 years ago? I think
Yeah,
something
6 7
like
years ago.
that. We were both writing on Daily Fintech, and then Arun moved into the venture capital world, and recently has jumped and rather made the transition into the gaming metaverse world. He is the chief growth officer of Boliverse, and we'll have the opportunity to understand a little bit more about Boliverse. But let's really talk about, all this that is going on. You have started, not declaring it officially, on LinkedIn, sort of curating some news, monthly news in the space, in the metaverse. And really, every time I look at it, there's always something very exciting, very innovative, and sometimes scary things too, in that list. So tell us about this world and how it differs from where you were before.
Sure. I mean, one thing I have to say in a broad sense is that if you looked at the 2017, 2018, I mean, probably more 2018 Bitcoin bear market, that's when it triggered, to where we are today. It's a definite bear market we are in today. But I can see so much that's happening, that's being built, that the builders are they are just constantly building. There are so many fascinating, exciting projects that are happening. And sometimes the kind of use cases that creep upon us, that kind of blindside us, it's just fascinating that, oh, that's an awesome use case, and how did I not see that coming? So that's where we are. I mean, for those often who think that cryptos are or even Web3 as a world, actually, it's definitely volatile, but it goes in cycles. But every cycle, the system is just gaining in maturity. It's gaining in people who are building with a lot of conviction. I think that's what fascinates me on a broader sense. In terms of specifically into my journey into this metaverse and Web3, as both of us know, we've been talking about this since 2016 times, and even when I was at PwC until in 2013, 14 times, we were working with the FCA and the Bank of England on several blockchain-based themes at that time, and there's still that conversation happening. How do we regulate this whole thing? But I think what's happened in the last maybe 2 to 3 years is that I've started to feel more and more convinced that I should start to put my money where my mouth is, right? So we've been commentators, we've been analyzers, and I've been investors. I've been investing in the space as well, but it almost felt like I need to start being an operator in the space. So that really was what kind of drove me into the conversations. And so that and a bunch of things that happens. I mean, it has to be that you want to do something, and an opportunity has to show up. It's just not like you just want something and it happens. I just found myself at the right place at the right time with Boliverse. Srini and I, who's the founder of Boliverse, we kind of know each other for 4.5 years now. I used to advise him on his previous Web3 startup as well. which was a microfinance emerging market space startup, and that took a big hit when he was when through COVID. Microfinance here got affected badly by COVID, and so he was looking at exploring the next project, and things came, and we just connected dots, and things happened. So that's really how it happened.
Arun, I was reading some numbers the other day in terms of the volume of transactions in the GameFi space. And the numbers were showing that the volumes were 15 times more than the number of transactions in DeFi. Of course,
Yeah.
the volumes are much lower, because here we're talking about micro transactions, whereas in DeFi it's maybe 80 times more in terms of the dollars. But to me, this is a very important sort of angle, and maybe underestimated, because if we improve the infrastructure for microtransactions, if we do it for the sake of the gamifying the gaming world, then we will benefit in the real sort of world, if that distinction is valid anymore, right? Meaning, because both are economic activities. But I think this is an important point. And tell me a little bit, any thoughts and insights in terms of the payments in the gaming space and what you're seeing there. Are they siloed? Are we talking about a lot of payments with the traditional methods, cards and so on? Is it crypto dominated? What is happening there?
So GameFi is understandably bigger in terms of microtransactions, primarily because of all the different involved actions that's happening. Unlike DeFi, where you just get in, perform a particular transaction, and you're out. You are going to see a lot more DeFi transaction as we start recovering from the Luna Terra episode. I think that's kind of killed the buzz around DeFi a little bit. And GameFi, in some sense, where are we getting these transactions from? Of course, the actions within the gaming world, everything when it goes on chain, of course, wherever it goes on chain, you start seeing these transactions flow through. And thankfully, we have the infrastructure these days with Polygon and Immutable supporting that kind of the transaction volumes. However, when we start looking at how they would translate into real world transaction volumes, although they're able to support the volumes, it's of course often the transactions per second that is probably more important in the world that's served by Visas and MasterCards these days. Whether are we in a position to, in a very secure way, move those transactions into Web3? I don't think we are there yet. I think it's probably another cycle before the cyber bells and whistles get built around it. But in general, often one of the things I often feel is that we see DeFi, GameFi, and SocialFi as verticals, which is like, this is finance, this is gaming, and this is
social networks,
social media. I see them as horizontals. Within Metaverse. So if Metaverse is a vertical, you're gonna have all these different paradigms like DeFi. People are going to want to go into an art gallery in a Metaverse and want to kind of buy art, which is probably expensive, and they don't have the liquid cash to buy it, but they may have a land NFT in their wallet, which they can quickly kind of get some cash for and buy this NFT. So those kind of transactions involves both Metaverse and NFTs, and you also have a DeFi transaction there. So that's like almost like embedded fintech as we speak in conventional fintech world. And if you look at SocialFi, every single ecosystem that's developing today, be it GameFi, be it SocialFi itself, and even DeFi, they are thinking on the SocialFi angle. If you're looking for the future Twitter in the Web3 space, they're of course looking at the SocialFi angle. But let's just take GameFi let's just take GameFi as an example. Every gaming ecosystem, they're going to have top players in there. And these top players are going to have some social swag within that ecosystem. And their profile will get built within that ecosystem. And that is where SocialFi methodologies come into picture. And at some point, we're going to see those creators of value become hubs of, they themselves will become microeconomies. Like, for instance, if you want to play a game with a particular social GameFi influencer, and you will need to have certain stake in their microeconomy to be able to even interact with them. The same thing in a SocialFi infrastructure. For lack of a better example, if Elon Musk is part of the future Web3 Twitter, for you to be able to retweet or have a conversation with him, we'll probably need to own a Musk coin. And I'm not saying these Musk coins should be listed on Coinbase, KuCoin, or Huobi. All I'm saying is there will be an FE coin, that could be an Arun coin, and the system, the SocialFi system, could decide what the exchange of value between our two coins is, depending on our social swag in that context. It can be in GameFi, it can be in SocialFi, it can be in DeFi.
As I listen to you, Arun, I'm thinking of, our Web 2 world, and how the social network started with messaging, and then maybe they add payments, maybe they add games, maybe they add whatever they add. And if we look at the East, we have super apps that added all these mini programs. So it seems that the way you are thinking of it, and potentially it could be like that, is more like the super app world, where you're linking these social aspects. We're not starting with messaging, we're starting probably with gaming, and there we have all the rest, the social aspects, the messaging, the micro buying, whether it's NFTs in galleries or tokens and so on. And the token that you spoke about, the Arun, the Elon Musk token, it's probably like our ID, like we have to sign up, something like that, that represents our avatar or ID and so on, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I firmly believe is, if social media was the growth hack for Web 2, GameFi is going to be the growth hack for Web 3 in terms of the metaverse and the scale and bringing the audience in. I think that's where the kind of, at least I mean, I may be wrong, right? This is my hypothesis. And in terms of going back to the social swag that we talk about, one of the things I really feel that Web3 in broad economic terms that it's adding as value is that it's shrinking the distance between creators of value and consumers of value. I'm not sure if I can put it any more succinctly, because if let's take the agriculture or farming ecosystem, right? If it in a Web2 world, you have the farmers creating the crops, that's the value that's being added, and it gets to the supermarkets somewhere else in the world, and someone like you or me go and buy them from the shops. We have no clue who's selling it to us from a farmer's perspective. We have that because there's so much distance between the two. There are so many people in the middle eating up a lot of value. And ideally, what should have happened is the farmer owns the crop until the consumer owns the crop. That should be the interaction. And all the people in between will just be providing services to the farmer, which is done in a very transparent manner. Now, that is really what is happening in the Web3 world. As artists, you're able to get 90-95% of the value that's accrued to you through Web3. And it's the same thing it's going to be with SocialFi. You will get the most of the value that you create on Twitter. Why should Twitter make most of the money that out of the value and the data that you create? You as the creator of value should accrue to you more than anybody else. And I think that philosophy needs to.
I mean, here you're talking about a very important sort of, I would say, both philosophical and practical issue of our time, right? The rent seeking, the rent sharing, and so on, that now is in the high teens in the best case, right? We're talking 15% or whatever. I'm talking about different businesses, and it can go up to 50%, whether it's developers developing apps or whatever it is. But is that really going to go to, let's say, single digits in the Web3 world? The rent that if you want, I don't want to call it the company, whether it's a DAO or whatever the legal structure is,
Sure.
the infrastructure, if you want, or the DApp, will it go to single digits? And I mean, I'm not sure. I'm a little wary of that in terms of what we are building right now. It has enough layers and enough greed that I'm not sure that we will do much better. It depends in the area. But can you give us some good examples where the difference is visible? I mean, Uniswap is like zero, right? For DeFi, but what are other examples, or in the social or gaming world are we seeing?
Yeah, I can give you an example out of the out of the GameFi ecosystem. We can talk about NFTs as well. If you look at the GameFi ecosystem, again, probably some shilling to do here on Bolivar's strategy as well, right? So the way we see this is the first few games on the gaming infrastructure is going to be, or on the Metaverse is going to be built by us as the core team or the founding team. But as the Metaverse scales and we start seeing people coming in, footfall and attendance on a regular basis, as we say, the daily active user base keeps increasing, we are going to have to fulfill their demand for gaming and other eventful things on the Metaverse through a creators ecosystem. And the creators ecosystem will have their own mini games, gaming economies, perhaps in some sense, as I mentioned, and they will basically drive what the exact incentivization mechanism is. Of course, there will be something in it for the DAO, the Metaverse, that kind of owns and runs the Metaverse, but it will not be what, for instance, even what Facebook promised to give 47.5% of the value that the creators accrue to the whole economy back to the back to the creators. To me, even that is too low for in the Web3 world. I think if you're creating something, you own 90% of it. 10%, yeah. If you're listing an NFT on OpenSea, yeah, 5%. And then those kind of numbers are sustainable in the Web3 world. But if you're starting to see a good chunk of the value that you've created going to middlemen, then you're clearly either building the wrong ecosystem or the wrong economic model. I don't think those will sustain in the long, over a period of time, because these cultural transformations take time as well. It's a very small community of people pushing for that kind of creators-driven economic models. So as the world starts waking up to those models, and those become reality, we're going to see more of them. Unfortunately, the Web2 world hasn't woken up to that, because they're even structurally misaligned to this incentive model, right? They are only kind of focused on increasing shareholder value. They don't care about the creators on their platform. I mean, I wouldn't say they don't care, but they care up to the point that they're able to add value to their shareholders. Rather than they don't really care about the creators. Whereas in the Web3 world, creators are everything. That's the way the ethos work in the space. So I think that's probably where the world is going. It's going to take a couple of cycles before it starts kind of sinking into the Web2 world.
So would that mean if the original vision comes true, would that mean that we will see a couple of big names at the very infrastructure level, like Polygon, for example, but then above those layers, we're not going to see huge dominance, because we're not, building with this idea that somebody will take all the market share, like Facebook or Amazon and those guys? Or is it possible and these dominant players will just be, much bigger and earning less?
So I think that there is going to be the dominance factor is not, I don't think will go anywhere. I think if, even today, right, because a good chunk of the Web3 ecosystem is funded by top VCs. Apart from the Bitcoin and the Ethereum cycles, all the new ones that started to rise, like Solana or Near, or just taking the L1s, right? Even there, they're all very well funded by the VCs. So they are going to be driven in the direction of take the market and then go about doing whatever you're going to do, right? So that ethos I don't think will change. But what will happen as and what should happen if things go for ethos, Web3 ethos, is as these organizations or ecosystems raise, we are all going to kind of be part of it, be able to create value and accrue value to ourselves. So for instance, if there is going to be a Solana mobile and I'm going to use that, I would want a piece of the value that I'm creating on Solana mobile coming back to me. And I think this, even with the Ethereum merge that's happening and hopefully happening later this year, I think that that concept is going to be there. Where I forget the exact specific transactional use case here, but there are certain transactions that are going to be compensated with back to the consumer. So if you initiate a specific DeFi transaction on Ethereum post the merge, you are going to be rewarded with Ethereum for that. It's almost like the Avios model in the American Express world, where the certain transactions or certain size transactions give you back some Avios. So that model is happening because they're able to kind of decide which actor is going to get how much, what value they're adding to the ecosystem, and based on that, value will accrue. And as long as it's kept fair and transparent, and it's all smart contracts driven, I think personally I like that to think the future is bright.
Great. Arun, for our audience that is not so immersed in the metaverse and in the GameFi world, what are the main infrastructure blockchains on which games are built today? I know Neo from China, the Ethereum of China, and Polygon. Which are the other ones that are the main ones?
Sure. So of the gaming ecosystems, I think it would be hard to look past on the layer one level. It's Ethereum. But Ethereum, it's very hard to use it because of the, particularly last year, it was ridiculous to use it because of the gas fees. So that kind of gave rise to ecosystems like Polygon and Immutable. I think there's always this this challenge with their competitors, Polygon and Immutable. So typically you tend to choose one of those two layer two solutions. And then you basically have the Solana ecosystem. There are lots of games that's like, for instance, STEPN completely changed the game for Solana. As we know, Solana, in fact, at the start of this year, they took a big hit through the wormhole hack that happened on the ecosystem. But thankfully, the STEPN thing happened to them and just brought so much capital and so many consumers and footfall into the Solana chain. And that kind of boosted the gaming ecosystem within Solana. And I think they are investing a lot. Not just that, I know Avalanche is looking at games. Every single layer ones that are actually looking to grow will have to tap into GameFi to show any kind of footfall. If they are not looking at that as a, let's say, in a cheap sense, as a growth hack, they are missing something. They have to tap into that. But if you're looking at large players, it's Ethereum supported by Polygon and Immutable and Solana. I think between those two, it's largely that.
Yeah, interesting. What about play to earn and failure, if you want, of their token model, the failure of their tokenomics, rather correctly is said. Do you think that we will have some type of successful play to earn tokenomics, and maybe from that we borrow the design for socialize to earn and whatever to earn going forward? What are your thoughts there?
I think play to earn, I think we should probably stop saying play to earn, because I think the world is moving to play and earn. Because what play to earn really kind of indicated to people is, you come play with us for like an hour and you make $10 a day, right? I mean, for people like people living in the UK or in the US, $10 a day is a lot of money. It's not a lot of money. But if you're looking at people in Indonesia, India, $10 a day is a lot of money. So, and if you look at the Axie Infinity user base, Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia are their biggest market. They just growth hacked into the market in a big way by saying, hey, you come play our game and we'll give you this much amount of money. It actually worked well in a bull market because people were just pumping money into Axie just because of the daily active users that were coming into it without even looking at the economic model. But what started happening is as soon as the market started tumbling and their utility tokens started falling in price, it meant what people who were earning $10 was they were making $1 a day, and that meant people weren't incentivized to come back to it anymore. And that is one aspect of it. But the other aspect of it is any economic model within Web3 or anywhere else, if they don't create value for their tokens, if they don't create demand for their tokens as much as the supply is being created, if you're creating $10 worth of supply of your tokens per day, you should be able to create $10 worth of demand for the same tokens per day. If you don't work out both supply and demand at the same time, it's prone to fail. It won't scale. And that has to put through multiple scenario analysis. You've got to be able to understand the sensitivity of the model that you're creating and be able to know, okay, if this variable changes, my model is completely screwed. It's completely invalidated. So how do I protect this variable? What are the things I need to do to protect this variable? So that is the kind of thinking they need to have. That's the first thing. So that was what I think went wrong with the likes of Axie Infinity, probably even StepN, if I may say so. I think what should be done is, I don't think there is one GameFi ecosystem that can claim that they have cracked the tokenomics or economic model. They're all experimenting. But I would like them to go to the market with certain amount of humility and say, these are our hypotheses. We are going to put it into the market and let the market tell us if this is something that they like or not. If they don't like it, we would like to tweak the model and slowly start scaling. What happened with both Axie and StepN, where they just published their white paper with all the math in it, all the bells and whistles in it on day one, and they just went full big bang into the market. So which means there's very little room to maneuver. You've got to be able to wait for the market to tell you, and those are the kind of things that Silicon Valley imbibes in you. Silicon Valley, that's you in Silicon Valley, you don't wait until the finished product is out there. You wait, or whatever you think is the finished product is out there, to put it out there into the market. You give it some thought, create a hypothesis, continuously A/B test your product. When you do that, you're able to kind of see the feedback that you need to see and be able to tweak the model. And when that's a year-long, maybe even a market cycle long exercise. And hopefully through this bear market, you're going to see some survivors whose tokenomics will sustain. And I sincerely hope Bolivar's is one of them. And frankly, it's good timing, because our economic model is going to be launched through Q3 and Q4 2022. We are in the process of doing that. So I think that that is going to be a crucial 6 to 9 months for us. So hopefully the market will tell us what they like, what they don't like, and we're able to scale from there.
It seems to me that these tokenomics and really the businesses that are depending on the adoption of the tokens need to understand both the marketing, customer acquisition strategies, and how to align them with the business model. And I'm sure Silicon Valley has quite a bit of insights and experience to learn from, even from businesses without tokens, right?
Absolutely.
And it's a bit like in the investment world, we can learn a lot from traditional investing due diligence and governance, and take some of those principles and avoid the Luna Terra type of debacles, if you want, or at least mitigate, right? So it's important not to continue this divide between the traditional world and the people on the other side, be it the metaverse, the crypto punks, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't think there's much that's changed personally. If you're a business person, the fundamentals of building a business hasn't changed. If people think that has changed, then there's going to be a hard learning for them there. I think what has really changed is how do you go about sharing the value that is being created, and that is pretty much what has changed. And of course, the infrastructure, the technology is new, but technology is always new. Every year there's something new that keeps coming up. So, and in my opinion, technology is just a means to an end. In the last cycle, we used the term blockchain. This cycle, we use L1 and Web3. In probably 2-6 cycles later, you and I wouldn't be even talking about Ethereum and Solana. We don't talk about TCP/IP when we talk about Google and Amazon anymore. So I think we'll be moving on from those technology conversations, and we'll be just thinking about, okay, how are these apps talking to each other? I think that's really the conversation we need to be moving towards. And the golden principles of running a business doesn't change between Web2 and Web3. I hope it doesn't.
Arun, would it be fair to say, like in the current Web3 world, even in the very innovative or digitally transformed businesses, we talk about, the focus on customer experience or transparency and so on. So in this world, in the new Web3 world, we'll be talking about a focus on sharing the rent, basically, transparently. Yeah. That will be 100% the focus, which was not the focus before. It was maximizing profits and customer experience and efficiency and so on. But now it's about sharing the rents. Is that
Yeah, I still think maximizing the profits attitude shouldn't change. Just that after they maximize it, there will be a lot more people benefiting out of that, rather than just a small group of people becoming trillionaires and billionaires and whatnots, right? So I think that is where the world is moving into. I really see this as more of an inclusive capitalist society that we are moving into. And personally, I like to see these little things like multiple ecosystems where we all have our social statuses, and there is some kind of interoperability between these ecosystems. And things like the soul-bound tokens and all these kind of new concepts that are coming in will give us our credibility within those ecosystems. National boundaries shouldn't matter, racial boundaries shouldn't matter. None of those things should matter, which has mattered all these years and decades. I think what will really matter is what value are you adding in your ecosystem. That's all.
Great. Arun, thank you very much. Before we close, tell us a little bit about Bulliverse, so our audience hears what the vision is.
Sure. So we started a journey about a year and a bit now. I think the first tweet that went out was, we are building an open metaverse. I think that vision hasn't changed. We're still working towards that vision. And as I told you, I think the way we build towards it is that we build a bunch of games. We start growing our user base through the games and start creating a use case for the metaverse, because we need to have the demand for whatever we are going to offer from the metaverse gig for the people who become participants in the metaverse. And one of the critical things, and that kind of aligns with the Web3 ethos that we have within Bulliverse, is the fact that we are creating it as a creator's economy. As long as, the first year and a half is going to be us creating the metaverse, the games. But as I mentioned, we're going to have creators, they're going to give them a low code, no code solution, which people will be able to come and create their own little mini games. We'll create all the plugins, the assets that they need for that to happen. And through a decentralized curation process, they will be able to publish their games. Initially, games could be events in future, whatever they can do to create their own little economies within the metaverse. And that is where we are going with it. There are a bunch of other exciting steps that are happening through Q4 this year, but I can't give you that yet because I want to keep it a little bit of a suspense for our community and tease them a little bit. But at this point, what I can tell you is our second game just launched this week. We launched our first game in May. Our second game is just launched, and we're creating the economic model around those games now. So, which is basically the leaderboard campaigns, which will bring people in. They play, they get to win something out of it. And we are creating marketplaces within the economy that again start seeing a lot of transactions as these gamers base increase. And we have two exciting things, what we call the leveling up system, which is if you're an NFT holder that's part of the metaverse, then you will be able to level up. You will be able to see the value of your value accruing to your NFTs. And the other one is your NFT holders. The other one is the gamers. And we are also launching the level up for both these audiences. So that kind of creates a growth strategy across the games that we are creating. And once we've proven that this scales, then it is about lifting and shifting it across multiple gaming experiences, probably multiverse as well. Who knows?
Great. Thank you so much, Arun, for sharing your excitement and insights and experience with us.